Welcome. You've just stepped into something a lot different. A space where we slow down, where we ask the questions we don't always dare to ask, especially in the bedroom. This is 34. What happens when we stop asking how to perform and start asking how to be present? It didn't begin with a fantasy. It began with an honest conversation. That moment of honesty that lingered longer than I expected. There is a symbolism in the number 34. 3 equals the feminine energy. Things like creativity, the body, and receptivity. 4 represents masculine energy with structure, holding, and direction. Together, it represents the balance between the feminine and the masculine in sexual presence. I have 2 kids. They are 16 and 18 years old. We talk very openly about a lot of things in life. Over dinner one day, my daughter said something that struck me really hard. She said, "Most guys my age don't know how to hold a woman. They're emotionally absent, obsessed with porn, and only care about themselves. They don't even ask what the woman wants. They don't even know how to truly meet her." That conversation stayed with me, and it really frightened me. It made me realize how much is missing from how we speak about sex, intimacy, and connection, especially as men. It also made me realize why we see a big divide in today's society around single households, individualism, where a lot of women say they do not need a man, not for financial means, not for doing things in the house, or not even for having sex. But there is really only one thing younger women today need from a man, and that is to be met and held emotionally. So I decided to do something about it. I began to listen, really listening, to women, to men, to couples from the Nordics, Germany, France, Belgium, the UK, the US, and Ukraine. Their ages are ranging from the early 20s to 60s. What came out of these conversations became this podcast, and this will also then eventually be turned into another book. 34 Orgasms is not a manual, it's a mosaic of real voices, real bodies, real experiences, and real truth. It's about the kind of sex we rarely talk about. It's not just physical, but emotional. It's spiritual, tender, wild. It's about connecting the dots between why men and women are further away from each other today than ever before, and at the same time, there's a big need for men to better understand women, and for women to see how other men have healed. I'm Henrik. I am not a sexologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a man who chooses to listen. Some of you may know me as the author of the Phoenix Year, Love, Loss, and Finding Home, or maybe from the Hacker's Pursuit trilogy. But this podcast, this is something else. In my own life, I've tried to live by a simple but powerful balance: emotional, intellectual, and sexual connection. All 3, all present, all honest, and aligned. In this podcast series, you'll hear stories that really shook me. Stories that made me rethink what I thought I knew about pleasure, desire, and presence. And sometimes I'll be alone. Sometimes I'll be joined by the people who share their stories. Some are anonymous, and others are really bold and beautifully open. One woman told me she had never had an orgasm with a man, until she met someone who could hold her really emotionally. And when she finally let go, she came like a volcano. Another said she could only surrender when blindfolded, because only then did she feel really safe. And a couple told me they've rebuilt their intimacy not through sex, but through touch. Another woman dressed up as a Viking tied her partner up and reclaimed her power with ropes, rhythm, and a roaring laughter. And it struck me, why is it still rare for women to feel truly seen in bed? Why is it still normal that sex ends when the man comes? And across cultures, across religions, we've told stories about sex that center around male pleasure. And it frames the woman's desire as dangerous, dirty, or even forbidden, where it's all about shame. But let's be honest, the danger was never in her pleasure. It was never her desire that was the problem. It was the men's fear of it. And you'll see further proof through every story in this podcast series that it's not the women who are dangerous or dirty. It is the men who are weak. Too weak to face emotion, too weak to hold space, too weak to stay present when real intimacy shows up. That's not an insult. That's a challenge. And if we dare to meet that challenge, something extraordinary can happen. But when you listen, you really listen, you hear something else. There's a quiet longing, a soft sigh, a truth hidden in silence, waiting to be spoken. That's where 34 begins. This podcast is not about techniques, even though we might definitely go into a few examples. But more importantly, it's about presence, about giving, not out of obligation, but out of reverence, curiosity, and devotion. And yes, it is about orgasms, because women, they can have many orgasms. But how often are they truly invited to it? It's about showing for a man that real pleasure for him comes when staying very present with his woman as the climax is over and over again. We'll talk about pleasure, about shame, about emotional walls, about healing and finding strength again, about what it means to touch with presence, not just hands, but with heart and being in the moment, right here, right now. Because the truth is, sex is never just about sex. It's about how we live, how we connect, how we dare to be vulnerable with ourselves and with each other. So I invite you not just to listen, but to feel, to reflect, to open up to something deeper within. This is the beginning of a conversation, of a journey. Welcome to 34. Before I started listening to others, I had to learn how to listen to myself. This is not a woman's story. It's a man's story. This is my story. The fracture. I was in my mid-40s. On paper, everything looked fine. I had a wonderful family, 2 houses, cars, a big boat, a very successful career that led me to the furthest corners in the world. On the surface, I had everything most of you probably dream of. But when you were looking under the surface, I was disappearing. Not in some dramatic way, but quietly, bit by bit. Because every time I said yes when I meant no, every time I smiled to keep the peace, and every time I touched without feeling. And then it all broke. The relationship, the identity, and the sense of self. I remember sitting in my car outside the grocery store one day, and I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. And this was not from heartbreak, but from the hollow ache of not knowing who I was anymore. My kids, two teenagers, they still needed me, but how could I guide them when I couldn't even hold myself? And for years, I have been praised for being strong, clear, controlled in everything I did, at home or at work. But underneath that was a boy who had never been taught how to feel, not in the right way. And sex? I've been lucky. When I was 19, I had a lover. She was 34. She taught me something many men never hear, that real pleasure lives where the mind, the heart, and the sex meet. That a woman is not a formula, and that she helped showing me a map over how a woman actually works, the sensual landscapes, the sweet spots to learn and explore, and that every woman is different. She taught me that real intimacy begins with presence, with attunement and balance. Still, even with that gift early on, I lost myself later because knowledge isn't the same as embodiment. And I realized I had been touching others for years without truly feeling my own hands. The burn, the Phoenix year, that's what I came to call it. Because everything burned, and from those ashes, something new began. This was not overnight, it was not clean, and it was definitely not easy. My best friend passed away, my marriage ended, the life I had built was dismantled literally to the ground. I started a new relationship with a much younger woman. It was extremely passionate, wild, and true. And I knew what some might say about age, about ego, but love doesn't really ask about numbers. It asks about connection, about truth, about the courage to build something real. And it taught me this: we all carry pressure, like a cooker on the edge of bursting. If we never learn to self regulate, if we never learn to speak, to feel, to process, we explode or go numb. And we hurt people, people we love. Love, grief, heartbreak, longing. They come in waves. There's a love that we're born into, family, the foundation upon which everything else is built. But even this love is not always easy because it can be filled with warmth or with wounds, with safety or with scars. Then you have the love we choose, our friends, the quiet, steady kind that carries you through the hardest times, the people who see you at your worst and stand by you anyway, the ones who remind you who you are when you've lost yourself. And then you have the love we fall into, the romantic one, passionate, unpredictable, the love that consumes, ignites, transforms. And this can be tender or wild, comforting or chaotic. It can be a sanctuary or a storm. And then there is self love, perhaps the most difficult to cultivate, yet the most important of all, because without it, every other kind of love becomes unstable. I had experienced all of them. I had known the steady familiarity of a marriage that spanned decades, and one that actually built a family but also held years of unspoken resentments. I had known the soul shaking, all consuming love that knocks the air from your lungs, the kind that feels destined and undeniable. I had known love lost, and I had come to realize that love is not just something we feel, it is something we choose. To love is to be vulnerable, to stand at the edge of uncertainty and trust that you will not fall. It is to risk pain, to risk heartbreak, to risk everything. And yet, we do it anyway. Because love is what makes us grow. It pushes us, challenges us, forces us to confront the parts of ourselves that we might otherwise ignore. And sometimes it takes breaking completely to fully understand what love really is. After the breakup, I tried dating. It was messy. There were kind, open, beautiful women, but I saw so much fear. Fear of being ghosted, fear of trusting, or fear of losing again. There were walls being built around these women's hearts. And I was still grieving too. Men say they want to be close, but they fear what closeness demands: softness, silence, surrender. The learning. That experience I had at 19, that early map of love and presence, resurfaced in new ways. Not through labels like Tantra or something like that, but through simple art of noticing, of listening, breathing, being here, now. I started to ask myself, where do I hold tension? What am I afraid to say? What have I not yet dared to feel? And slowly, layer by layer, I began returning to my body, to presence, to truth. Not to become some perfect lover, but to become honest with myself, with the women I meet, with what I carry, and what I long for. The reflection. I'm not telling you this only to inspire you. I'm telling you because I know I'm not alone. There are millions of men out there who are smart, successful, good-hearted men who don't know how to feel, who don't know how to stay, who don't know how to be fully inside their body when someone touches them and mean it, who do not know how to express their feelings. 34 is not just about women's pressure. It is about us men too. It is about our healing, our presence, our truth. It's about learning to stand in love and act from a place of love. In any relationship, you can choose to act from a place of love or a place of fear. What I've seen and continue to see through the people I meet in everyday life, in dating, in interviews I do for 34, and there are a lot of them, if not the vast majority of people, no matter in which country you live, act from a place of fear when it comes to relationship. There is a fear of being hurt, fear of being abandoned, fear of losing your home. And when we act from a place of fear, you cannot fully, truly love wholeheartedly. As when you act from a place of love, you risk losing, you risk getting hurt. But it's okay, because real strength is not about how hard you can thrust. It's about how still you can stay when the truth of another person touches you. So the Phoenix year taught me this, that to rise again, you must be willing to burn, not just once, but over and over again, until the armor cracks and presence begins. And then you can truly love, fully, honest, and with a vulnerable yet loving heart. That's the man I want to be. That's the man this podcast is guided by. So in our next episode, a story of first love, deep desire, and the longing that never fully left. Her name is Elin, and her story begins with, I didn't know how much I needed to be seen until he looked at me.